buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Yep, live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com. And, of course, across the state of Alaska. This is your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, and welcome back to the program. It is the Tuesday edition of the Michael Dukes Show, although it feels like Monday again. I'm just throwing that out there in case you were wondering. We're ready to go and rock and roll. Tuesday means, of course, the weekly top three. We dive down into the three big topics as delineated by our friend Brad Keithley over at Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. He combs the world and the internet and the World Wide Web and the books and pulls it all out and says, these are the three most important things to talk about. And we do. And that's what we've got today. So we're going to talk about a little bit of the fiscal cart before the horse, the governor's lack of fiscal plan, and what came out of the whole debate over the Cook Inlet. So those are going to be the three big topics for today. Plus, in hour two, we're going to be joined by Chris Story, who's going to give us our weekly life coaching lesson, and we'll see what he has to say there. But meanwhile, let's just let's get started, shall we? Brad's waiting in the wings, so let's get this thing going on. Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Michael, I'm doing great today. How about you?
You know, it's Monday. It's Tuesday, but it's a Monday on a Tuesday. So it's what it is.
Did you wake up with the same, weekend hangover from all the good things you did on the weekend this morning? Or
no, I mean, I worked all weekend. I was in Fairbanks the entire weekend and then drove back Sunday night and did the show. And no, I'm still trying to recover. So we're still moving forward here. But that's why I've got you here to help me out and give me, that way I don't have to think quite as much because you've already thought out all the good stuff. So, that's it's just, I'm always thinking ahead here. Let's get to it though and start talking about it. You've got some, interesting things to talk about today. I know you had a good discussion, in that landmine, debate with John Sims, or interview, I guess, whatever it was. And then we're going to get to that here in a little bit, but we'll start off with the cart before the fiscal horse, and let's get started there.
So I've got to give Ben Carpenter a lot of credit as we go into this, because I'm going to complain about him in just a moment. But I got to start with giving him a lot of credit. He writes he and the entire Kenai delegation write a column each week for the Peninsula Clarion, which is a summary of he and Justin Ruffridge and Jesse Bjorkman's views on what happened during the week in Juneau and what's in the week upcoming. And Ben's it's called the Capitol Corner, and Ben's column this week, written last week, but for the week ahead, was a brave man. The second paragraph says, "This week, I want to talk about tax structure. While it might not be the most riveting topic at first glance, I urge you to pause and consider something. Within the intricacies of tax reform lies the key to unlocking Alaska's potential for robust economic growth." And Ben went ahead in that column to talk about his HB, HB 109, which is his proposal to reduce corporate income taxes, and explained that his proposal to reduce corporate income taxes is an effort to unlock corporate attention to Alaska. Alaska corporate income taxes are among the highest, if not the highest, in the nation. They're a graduated rate, so you pay more progressive rate, so you pay more the more the corporation has in income. And Ben's analysis has been, and I think it's a fair analysis, has been that is one of the things that inhibits corporations from looking to Alaska as a potential home and a potential market for their manufacturing and for other things. And so his proposed HB 109 is to reduce the corporate income tax, eliminate the progressivity of it, and bring it down to a flat tax of 2% of income. Generally speaking, a good proposal. Here's the problem with it. It costs $300 some odd million in terms of lost revenue or reduced revenue that the state would get out of it. And there's really no sensible claim that amount would be made up by new corporate activity, at least not in the near or intermediate term. Maybe over the longer term, people can claim that, but certainly not over the near or intermediate term. And Ben hasn't made that claim. It's just, let's get this structure right and let's attract additional corporate activity to Alaska, and we'll go from there.
The implication is that down the road it will generate overall kind of more business and activity and things like that, and maybe that will offset. Is that kind of the implication?
Maybe, although he's really never made that claim, and he doesn't make that claim in the column. What HB 109 was at the beginning was one half of two bills. HB 109 was the corporate tax, the reduction, and then HB 142 was Ben's proposed sales tax. And basically what Ben proposed to do was implement a state sales tax and use a portion of the revenues to restructure the tax code and reduce the corporate income tax, reduce Alaska's reliance on among the highest, if not the highest, corporate tax in the nation. Reduce reliance on that and offset that by a broad-based sales tax that would include receipts from non-residents. And that sales tax, based upon the Department of Revenue's analysis, was going to net $1.1 billion, $1.2 billion on an annual basis. You deduct you remove the corporate income tax restructuring, and you get down to $800 million net gain for the state in terms of revenue, which would then be used, not to increase spending, but would then be used to substitute for PFD taxes, most regressive tax ever proposed, to substitute for PFD taxes and be able to increase the PFD. And so the combination of the two, the combination of the sales tax and the corporate tax, or the combination of the three rather, the sales tax, using a portion of the proceeds to offset the sales, or a reduction in the corporate income tax, and the remainder of the proceeds to offset the PFD tax, was net progressive for the state. I mean, sales taxes are still regressive, but they're a heck of a lot less regressive than PFD cuts. And so we were going to have a net positive gain in state revenue. But the sales tax died a long time ago. Ben brought it up in committee and could not get the Republican votes for the sales tax in committee. And so it's just sat there, just sort of dead, sitting on the table, just, withering away. And I thought with that, so would the corporate income tax. If the corporate income tax change would just sort of sit there with its pair mate, and die away. However, Ways and Means took up the corporate income tax reform and passed it out without the sales tax. So the net of what's going to House Finance out of Ways and Means out of this package is the tax reduction in corporate income taxes, the minus $300+ million in corporate income tax reduction. No offset in terms of sales tax, and no positive impact on PFD taxes. Indeed, if anything, by creating an even deeper deficit, the $300 million, the $300+ million tax reduction as a result of the corporate tax would increase PFD cuts, because you've got to offset the revenue drop someplace. And so it would increase PFD cuts. So we have the worst possible outcome of where this thing started out in terms of tax reform, and we've now sent to House Ways and Means. It's a lot like, wanting your dessert not only before dinner but in lieu of dinner, not only in lieu of this dinner but in lieu of dinner for the next so many years. And this is where I'm going to fault Ben. I think it's great that he has thought through carefully and designed a tax reform package that in his view, and I think fairly so, would make Alaska more competitive. But moving one piece of it, just like if you move the sales tax alone and left the corporate tax behind, moving one piece of it is not true tax reform. And so I'm going to fault him as chairman for allowing that one piece to move. And I'm going to fault him, frankly, as an author of the Peninsula Clarion article for not using that opportunity to explain the overall tax reform. What that column did was explain all the benefits out of corporate tax, out of overall tax reform. What that column did was explain the benefits of corporate tax reduction, but it didn't go ahead and say, look, we got to have our peas and carrots along with dessert. And we've got to have revenue to offset that. And we need additional revenue to offset the PFD tax.
I mean, do you think that he passed this out on its own? Because, I mean, essentially, it's been nearly impossible to pass any kind of connected pieces together. Was he maybe, trying to get this one and then he'll come back for another bite? Or what? I mean, what do you, we've tried, right? I mean, they said single subject. You can only do one thing. You can only do this. You can only do that. They wanted to put together a cohesive package, but, is this just the way it has to be?
Well, I mean, that's a question better put to Ben than put to me. But I don't think Ben's saying, he certainly didn't say it in the article, and certainly there's nothing around this process that indicates that this is, hey, I'm going to get corporate tax reform out there, and then I'm going to drag sales taxes along with, I'm going to get sales taxes out of the committee. I mean, sales taxes hasn't even been discussed in front of the committee for a substantial period of time. And I think what this was look, this is a piece. It's the most attractive piece. It's the piece I can get out of the committee. And so let's go ahead and get it out there. But it cannot stand alone. That piece cannot stand alone. I will be shocked and shocked at the irresponsibility of House Finance if they put that out on the floor. And I will be shocked if the House floor would pass it, and I'd be shocked if the Senate would pass it. But if they do, if they pass just corporate tax reform, what that is also is an increased PFD cut of about the same amount, because this legislature is not going to cut spending. This governor isn't even taking the steps to cut spending that substantially. So this is in my opinion, not only putting the cart way the hell before the horse, but I hesitate to say this, but it's irresponsibly talking about tax reform in a way that's irresponsible. I mean, you cannot talk about overall tax reform without putting the peas and carrots parts with the dessert part. This is certainly a dessert part, certainly a Reagan, if you cut taxes, they will come part. But in the current situation that Alaska is facing, it's irresponsible because it ends up in additional PFD cuts.
Your advice would have been to stick on the sales tax issue until it actually moved out, and then come to the corporate tax part. Is that what you're saying?
I would have moved them together. I would have moved them as a pair, and I would explain them as a pair. I mean, my advice would have been, yes, to discuss it in committee as a pair, to say we're not going to pass our dessert portion until we pass the peas and carrots portion, until we pass the whole meal. And my advice would have been, I'm sure Ben's not going to appreciate this, but my advice would have been in the column in the Peninsula Clarion, if you're going to discuss this issue, discuss it as a whole. Take the opportunity to educate your constituents as a whole that tax reform cannot just mean tax reductions in one area. It has to be offset by tax increases offsetting tax increases in another area, and that this bill passed alone is offset by tax increases in another area in terms of PFD cuts, in terms of the most regressive tax ever proposed.
Right.
So I understand. Believe me, I support the proposition that we have to have overall tax reform. I support the proposition that part of that overall tax reform should be corporate reduction in corporate taxes to make Alaska more attractive as a home and place to do business for corporations. I understand that. I accept that. I support that. But in our current environment, you can't do that without at least offsetting revenues, if not additional revenues. And moving this without the sales tax bill, I think, is, as I said, irresponsible.
All right, Brad Keithley, Alaskans Forced Sustainable Budgets. That brings us over to number 2, which is the question, does the governor really have is he really ever going to get serious about a fiscal plan? Does he have a plan for a plan, or what? We'll find out more here in just a moment. Brad Keithley, The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Are you sure those buffers aren't directed at me? You're a bad, bad man.
You're a bad, bad man. Yes, you are a bad, bad man. Yeah, no, I think they're directed at everybody that wants to talk about the truth here. Donna says, House GOP cuts PFD instead of a long-term fiscal plan. House Dems choose to vote down HJR 7, constitutionalizing the PFD. So that's where we are. And she's not wrong. I mean,
Yeah, that's where we are. But in that environment, going ahead and passing a corporate income tax cut just adds to the problem. It doesn't help solve the problem. It adds to the problem by creating an even bigger deficit. And so you've got HJR 7 down the tubes, you got a full PFD down the tubes, and now you're just adding by passing this bill alone, you're just adding to the deficit. So that's where I think the irresponsibility comes in.
Kevin says, no one outside of the Michael Duke Show wants to cut spending. Out of all the people in my office in the last 2 years, I've had almost no one except AFP advocating for less spend. In fact, they mostly said to me, more money. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, that's what we've become. We've become the world's largest piggy bank and gift giver and allowance giver, I need more.
So why in that environment are you voting for additional revenue cuts? I mean, why? Because we know where the marginal source of revenue is going to come. It's going to come from additional PFD cuts. So why in that environment where everybody wants more money are we voting for revenue cuts from corporations, knowing that it translates immediately into the tax or additional tax that has the largest adverse impact on middle and lower income Alaska families? I understand all that. I understand Donna. I understand Kevin. I understand Ben's article. But corporate income tax reduction is part of a piece. You pull it out and you pass it separately, and that's irresponsible because it's going to be made up by PFD cuts.
It kind of falls back into the whole thing that the Fiscal Policy Working Group said to begin with. It cannot be piecemeal. It has to be holistic. You can't do just one because one thing will get changed and it'll jerk the whole pattern out of askew, and then you won't be able to get the other things. But again, then they've got stumbling blocks of single subject rule and they can't do all this stuff together. So, I mean, is anybody really serious? The answer is no. Nobody's really serious about a long-term fiscal plan. Now, maybe Ben, but I mean, for the most part, the majority of everybody down there, they don't give two. They don't care.
But in the midst of that, you don't make it worse. As a responsible legislator, you don't make it worse. You don't say, "Oh, it's all falling apart anyway, so hey, let me grab my share while it goes out the door." I mean, you don't make it worse. You continue to work to make it better. You continue to take opportunities like Ben's column in the Peninsula Clarion to explain why it needs to be holistic, to explain why there needs to be a whole pattern, and why corporate tax reduction is a piece of that pattern to make Alaska more competitive. I get that. It's a great storyline, but that is only a piece of the whole. It's not an end in and of itself.
All right, what else we got here? Good morning, good morning, good morning. Yeah, no, I mean this. Well, for a second, I don't want to belabor it, but going back to what Kevin just said before, this is exactly what John Coghill told me 15, 20 years ago. This is exactly what Tammy Wilson said the same thing. People show up and they don't want less; they want more for themselves, for their for their special interest, for their kids or hockey team or whatever the hell it is that they're there for. Nobody that we have become Uncle Sugar. We have become all things to all people, and that just it can't continue. And Donna just said something that I think is right here. If Alaska focused on energizing a private economy, the entire math problem would change. But that's the problem. The economy has been totally waved into the. I mean, it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the private economy means nothing because they don't draw from it. So why should they care?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It would change, but we have to do it as a whole. We can't do it in pieces, parts.
Yeah, exactly. All right, number 2. Let's get to it. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Oh, all righty. Here we. Oh, it's 5 seconds, man. Such a. I hate it when I hate it when I mess up. All right, here we go.
Public enema number 1. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number 1, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Yeah. I'm a pain in this something or other. I know. I feel it right now. I've got a pain in my belly. All right. What do we got? Let's get back over to Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We're on to number 2 of the weekly top 3. Will the governor actually come up, or does he have, or is it there even an interest to have a fiscal plan? Brad, I mean, I'm curious at this point.
So I'm going to take us back to January of 2023, a little more than a year ago, when the governor introduced the fiscal year 2024 budget. A piece of that budget was a bill that the governor introduced, or a package of bills. The headline on the governor's press release was Governor Dunleavy introduces carbon management and monetization bills creating statutory structures. And it goes on to talk about the carbon sequestration bills and other carbon bills that the governor had introduced at the time. These bills were supposedly the backup to the revenue that had been included in the 10-year forecast, OMB's 10-year forecast, that inserted $900 million, up to $900 million per year over the 10-year forecast period. These bills were going to generate, were alleged to they're going to generate the $900 million that the state was going to get from these sorts of activities. Indeed, Governor Dunleavy said at the time, January 2023, we've been told by some that we can generate revenue in the billions over 20 years just from our forest lands, and then went on to talk about how the stuff from carbon sequestration, the geological sequestration of carbon, could add even more to that. All right, so that's January 2023. We've got $900 million in the 10-year forecast, $900 million of revenue in the forecast that balances the budget, indeed produces a surplus at some points in the 10-year forecast, being generated by this package of bills. All right, now let's come to April 18th, 2024, with the passage of one of those bills, the carbon sequestration bill. Alaska House, the headlines in the Alaska Beacon, Alaska House seeking to boost oil and gas business approves carbon storage bill. And it describes that, it goes on to describe this. In Alaska, the rights to subsurface resources are owned collectively by the state's residents through the state government. The original version of the bill required minimum payments by participating companies based on the amount of carbon dioxide injected underground. Legislators, however, removed that provision and replaced it with language allowing the Commissioner of the Department of Natural Resources to negotiate the financial terms of carbon deals with no minimum charge. Some funding formulas exist to pay for long-term monitoring of the injection wells. So we go from January 2023.
Where's my 900 million? I mean, come on, you just wait. Not even a minimum. Not even a minimum is allowed. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So we go from January 2023 of $900 million in the budget. We balance the budget, fiscal plan solved. As the governor said at the time, we push the costs off on somebody else. Alaskans don't have to pay. Magic 900 million. We've gone from that 900 million now to zero minimum in the bill as it's passed. And I'll talk in a moment about all the reasons why that's understandable. But here's the deal. The governor in 2023 told us his fiscal plan included a big chunk of money, nearly $1 billion a year out of this and assorted other bills. And now we have a bill that passes the House that doesn't have even a minimum amount of revenue being generated in it. The question to the governor would be, okay, so you just blew a $900 million hole in your fiscal plan for that you put forward last year. How are you otherwise going to fill it? How are you otherwise going to balance the budget? Because the magic 900 million just disappeared. And the response from the governor's office, as is the response on many things these days, is crickets, right? Nothing. No response, no comment, no thank you, no, we may still get the money. I mean, none of that. It's just, yeah, well, too bad that didn't happen. I mean,
that was the plan, but plans change.
but the plan, there is no plan. That's the point. There is no plan anymore. The governor had a plan. He told us he had a plan. The plan was what one of the tenets of the plan was the $900 million that was going to come from this bill. And now that's shot to all the heck because we've taken out even the minimum. Forget the projection of $900 million. We've taken out even the minimum. And now the governor and so you got a $900 million hole, and the governor's just not saying anything about it. So there is no plan. There is no fiscal plan. We've known that for a while.
Yeah.
But each time you see one of these events happen, it just is a further nail in the coffin. A governor would get out there and say, "Yep, that didn't work out, but here's how I'm going to fill the hole otherwise." He's not doing that. He hasn't done that for a long time. I mean, the sales tax, the press conference where he talked about a sales tax briefly was now approaching a year ago, and there is no other plan. And so it's just, I mean, yes, the Democrats deserve a lot of criticism. Yes, they voted against HJR 7. Yes, there's all sorts of bad things that are going on that side. Yes, they want to increase spending. Yes, I understand all that. But this governor has a responsibility to propose balanced budgets. And the only way we're getting to balanced budgets is through PFD cuts on the backs of middle and lower income Alaska families. Right. The governor said we were going to do it differently. That bill that he said was going to allow us to do it differently is gone. I mean, the bill's still there, but the revenue's gone. So what's the replacement plan? And we got
remember
crickets.
because he put the big PFD, put the full PFD up front, and then said on the backside the carbon sequestration was going to make up the money. That was the whole point. So now the fallback becomes again the PFD. I mean, it's that simple. And what was the justification for the legislature on removing the minimums? I don't even understand why they said that they had to do that.
Well, because the market's not fully developed. We don't know what the value is. We want the legislature's justification is we want the development of coal. In Kevin's case, Kevin's a big supporter of coal development, particularly in his district. We want the development of coal. We want the development of natural gas. That comes with carbon problems. And so carbon sequestration is really now viewed, frankly, as a state service
For net
in
zero.
support in support of the development of those resources. And at least you might make the argument, well, if we give them carbon sequestration, if we don't charge them for carbon sequestration, or we charge only a minimal amount for carbon sequestration, we're going to get the development of all these resources, and we're going to have royalty revenues from these resources, and so that's how we're going to get the revenues. But no one's even arguing that. I mean, it's just let's give stuff away, let's spend and create all these great things for Alaskans. Let's create a great 3 campus university system. Let's create all sorts of other things that we want in this state. But revenue, we're not going to worry much about revenue because we got this PFD. We can just keep taking more and more and more. Kevin's MOAR, more. Well, that's exactly what's going on with the PFD. They just want more and more and more and more of the PFD. And every time we talk about revenue, the sales tax bill, all of a sudden it's disappeared. The carbon sequestration revenues, they've disappeared. I mean, revenues. No one cares about revenues because all of them are just sort of sitting there counting on the PFD cuts to make up for it. They give lip service to saving the PFD, but then they do things like pushing forward on corporate tax reform, pushing forward on carbon sequestration without minimum revenues. They push forward on the very things that are supposed to give us revenues without actually going forward with those revenues.
Well, it's, the problem with all these things that we've talked about this at the state level, at the national level, and everything else is eventually the equation reaches the end, right? I mean, eventually there will be a part where there is no more zeros to add to the end of the deal. And you're like, well, I guess we've spent it all. Then what are we going to do? And instead of slowing it down now and softening the blow, we're just running full tilt boogie into it. And it's there's no slowing down. The governor doesn't have a plan. Nobody seems to really have a plan.
It's not even that we're not slowing it down, Michael. We're speeding it up by layering on additional programs on top of additional programs. Your comment about how much is automatic every year just keeps going up. The amount that the amount of additional spending that gets layered on every year when you add more programs, when you add Julie Colombe's child care, state child care, when you add more to the university, when you add more to K through 12, it just keeps building up more and more and more every year. So we're getting to the point faster, and when we get to the point, we're hitting it much harder than we need to, and we've done it by taking away the cushion on middle and lower income Alaska families in the process. So it's horrible. I mean, it's horrible to see. It's horrible to see this governor who went around proudly saying, look, I got $900 million. Don't worry about it. We're set. And when his $900 million goes down in flames, who doesn't have anything to say. It's just, I mean, it is irresponsibility built on top of irresponsibility.
Right. And there's no answers. Like you said, they're not just not pulling on the brakes. They're shoveling the coal right into the box, as the train goes over the bridge that's out. And they're like, it's going to be spectacular. Just throw more coal in. It'll be fantastic. We can make that leap. All right, let's move over to number 3. Quick tease for number 3. You had a sit down this last week with John Sims from NSTAR and at the landmine, and you're going to give us some lessons learned out of this, some thoughts and ideas.
Yep, exactly right. It's the debate is on both YouTube on the Landmine channel, the Alaska Landmine channel, and on Facebook Live at or Facebook videos, I guess by now, on the Landmine channel, and you can watch the full debate there. But in the coming segment, I'm going to talk about what my takeaways were from the discussion, and it was interesting and it was useful.
All right, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. I dropped the link in the chat room there for anybody that wants to watch it on Facebook. After the show, you can go over there and follow that link. We will be back with more Brad Keithley, the Weekly Top 3. We continue in just a moment on The Michael Duke Show.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. All right. Yes. Ron says, just curious. I heard that the carbon storage would be a 50-year contract. Once the carbon is put into the ground, wouldn't it be a permanent forever storage that would make our land virtually useless? I mean, it would be in the ground. It wouldn't make the land itself useless. This is deep subsurface stuff, but I mean, it's a 50-year contract, but I think you'd have to renew it because it can't come back out. That's the whole point, right, Brad?
Well, there's been discussion about using carbon as and carbon injection as a way of additional oil recovery, and some of the
Sure.
views are that putting it in the Cook Inlet, particularly if you're bringing it down from the slope, or putting it in the Cook Inlet would enable it to be used for oil recovery in the Cook Inlet. Pretty speculative, but there's some of that, and carbon injection up on the slope, which is what some are talking about. Again, it would be available to be used as a source of I'm not sure what the right term is, but a source of stuff that would help move oil out. So it's
Right.
not clear it wouldn't have value, but the carbon itself would be owned by the person injecting it. The state would merely own the space, the capacity in which the carbon's being stored. So if it did have value, that you could bring it out and have value from it, that would be the value generated on behalf of the owner of the carbon, as opposed to on behalf of the state.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where that goes. It's at 2,800 feet minimum, and the CO2 is a benign gas. There are also emerging industries that could use CO2 as part of some sort of green fuel. Yeah. Okay. And yes, pressurized carbon does uplift. That's what they're talking about, repressurizing reservoirs and things like that. It gets that heavier stuff out that, there's only so much natural pressure in them. And then when they start to slow down, you re-inject it. And they do that with gas, natural gas as well, re-inject it to pump the well back up. So yeah, they would use carbon for that.
But
anyway.
again, the carbon itself is owned by the person who injected it. So the value of using it for that purpose would go to the benefit of the owner of the carbon, as opposed to the state.
I could see that being a little complicated, but then again, if you got a 50-year contract, I mean, you have to pump a lot of carbon in there to get $900 million a year out of that. That's a lot of, I mean, that's a significant lift from where they're at right now, from what we're getting, $3.5 billion a year right now. And now they're, from royalties and everything else. And you want to carve out almost another $1 billion a year in carbon costs, processing that carbon. That I don't know how the math works out on that, Brad.
Well, the $900 million was from a combination of the forest provision, which is we were going to keep a bunch of trees going, and they were going to absorb carbon, and we were going to charge for that, and then the sequestration. So the $900 million was a combination of those two. I haven't gone back to catch up with the trees to see where we are with those, but the last time I did check, we weren't. That wasn't generating a whole lot of money. And now we've taken the other thing, the carbon sequestration, geologic carbon sequestration off the table in terms of a revenue source. So you and I criticized the $900 million at the time as being highly speculative and being highly uncertain and unlikely. And in fact, the fiscal notes that were done around this bill, and the trees bill showed zero revenue. But the point is, the governor told a story that his fiscal plan balanced because of the $900 million.
Yeah.
And now the $900 million is just gone. It's just vaporized. And we have a hole. If we want to keep the geologic analogies going, we have pore space into which the governor's poured nothing to try to balance the budget.
Yeah, and it has no comment on any of that. Sorry, I'm still laughing about the fact that you said you haven't checked in on the trees. I could just see Brad leaning against a tree and putting his hand on the tree. How you doing, tree? Are you absorbing that carbon? Is it good? And the tree's like, yeah, Brad, the carbon's awesome. Brad's checking in with the tree.
Yeah. That's not quite what I meant, but okay.
Yeah, I get it. Sorry. Sometimes that's how my mind works, Brad. You just, roll with it. Just roll with it, All right. So we are going to jump forward here. Kevin says there are at least a dozen tree projects in the States with a native association that are generating millions of dollars a year for those associations. Well, good. Let's sign us up for it. Let's go. Let's make it happen. Chop, chop, wiki. All right. We're going to go. Brad Keithley, final third segment. There we go. That's what I meant. Number 3 of the weekly top 3. Let's get to it. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. There we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Well, I mean, come on. It's a pinch. It's a pinch of something. Brad Keithley is our guest. The weekly top 3 continues. We're down to the third subject today, which has to do with his interview and debate with John Sims from NSTAR this last week at the Landmine. I've dropped a link in the chat room for those that want to go watch that. It's a good watch. I got through a big chunk of it yesterday, but you can go take a look at it. It's over on Facebook or YouTube. But Brad, you learned some things in that debate. What's your takeaways from all that?
So it was an interesting debate. Landfield did a good job moderating it, a good job balancing what John Sims had to say and what I had to say in response. I guess I have a few takeaways. One is the economics of what we're facing in the Cook Inlet are worse even than what we thought. Toward the end of the debate, we got into the cost of additional Cook Inlet gas supply. There's a chart that I used during the debate. We've had a piece of it on the show before. A chart that I use that shows the incremental cost of additional tranches of Cook Inlet gas supply. And one of those, you've got it right there. One of those, those charts show that the incremental cost, that's sort of it. But the red, the charts up on the screen, we've talked about it before. The blue is existing Cook Inlet production, or what's anticipated to come from existing Cook Inlet production. The red is the incremental that's needed. Part of that blue comes from additional Cook Inlet productions that's not yet under contract. And the red, if it comes from the Cook Inlet, comes from Cook Inlet sources that have yet to be identified. And the cost associated with those additional supplies, Cook Inlet supplies, the supplies that would be in blue above what's currently contracted, and the supplies that would be in red if they came from the Cook Inlet. There's an analysis done in last year by the working group that showed that the range of costs for some of the additional supplies is $9 to $13, and then the range of costs for additional supplies beyond that is like $15 to $24 or $25, somewhere in that range, significantly higher. And what came out during the last part of the debate is John said, "Oh, it's going to cost more than that." It's going to cost to get the additional tranche above the currently contracted supply. It's going to cost more than the range that was in the that was in the analysis, and beyond that, it's going to cost even more than that. So, the cost of Cook Inlet supply. One of the things one of the takeaways from the debate was the cost of Cook Inlet supply is even higher than we anticipated. That's higher than what's in the analysis. that makes LNG even more competitively attractive. The cost of LNG was lower than the cost of those Cook Inlet incremental supplies in the first place. If the cost of those Cook Inlet incremental supplies are going up, the cost of LNG looks even more competitively attractive going forward. So that was one piece of learning. We're not going in a direction that favors the Cook Inlet. We're going in a direction. I think I said during the debate. I recall saying during the debate then to John, then why the heck aren't we just pressing ahead, full steam ahead with Cook Inlet? Why are we, with LNG? Why are we even having this discussion about trying to get incremental supplies from the Cook Inlet? John's response was, we are pressing ahead with LNG. So this whole debate is running away, frankly, from incremental Cook Inlet supplies because of cost. Another takeaway was John had a defense of subsidizing the Cook Inlet that I really hadn't heard before, hadn't seen written down before. And it was, to capture a phrase that he used, Alaska energy independence. It was, we want to continue to have our state independent, be supplied from Alaska sources. We don't want any of that, foreign gas, being reliant on any of that foreign gas. And a piece of that argument was a national security argument that we've got major military installations up here. We don't want them being supplied by from foreign supplies of natural gas. Well, there's a couple of answers to that. One, the most likely, the nearest source of LNG is going to come from Canada, and I'm not convinced that we need to be treating Canada as a foreign supply. I mean, our defense interests are totally aligned with the Canadians. Another is the biggest producer on the planet of LNG right now is the U.S., coming from Gulf Coast sources of supply. And a lot of that LNG is coming around through the Panama Canal and going into Asian markets. So it's just a hop, skip, and a jump to add Alaska to that supply chain. So if your argument is we need Alaska supplied from American sources, then okay, we got American LNG. If we need a Buy American Act on this supply, we've got American sources that can satisfy it. But this whole argument was, well, we need to subsidize basically this argument boiled down to, we need to subsidize the Cook Inlet sort of regardless of where that takes us, sort of regardless of what the costs are, in order to have Alaskan sources of supply available to Alaska so that we're not dependent on foreign sources of supply. And even if you accept that notion for a moment,
Right.
Then the next question is, who pays?
Right.
I mean, the whole discussion we've had before on the show is, why are we using PFD cuts, which would be the source of the revenue for the subsidies?
Right.
Why are we using PFD cuts to pay for it? So if we're going to adopt this notion that we need Alaska independent energy in Alaska, we need to subsidize the Cook Inlet to continue to have Alaska sources of supply to rely on. Okay, fine. And we need to have Alaska sources of supply so the military's happy. Okay, fine. Why are we having middle and lower income Alaska families bear that burden? It's going to benefit everybody. Why aren't we using a broader base revenue system to generate those revenues that would be used to cover the subsidies? So
Right.
it was an interesting debate in the sense that the problem's getting worse, not better. and here's another defense that we haven't talked about before, but we're not going to talk about who pays. I mean, we'll just assume that the PFD cuts will cover it because
Right.
they cover everything else. So why not this? And it's just it was unsatisfying in the sense that those two issues were sort of left dangling out there at the end.
Well, this is nothing new. I mean, this is this idea of national security or oil independence, or those kind of things, gas energy independence. I mean, the question that never gets asked is at what cost. It becomes protectionism. I mean, this is the whole
Yep.
Jones Act thing and everything else, and it becomes protectionism for a specific industry. When you start to ask, okay, great, it'd be great to have oil independence or gas independence, but at what cost? Is it 2 times? Is it 3 times? Well, great. So people have to leave because they can't afford to live here, but we do have at least got our own gas. I mean, kind of thing. This is the benefit of the global market is that you can find or source a cheaper source of something like that. I mean, it's the whole idea of food independence. It's the same kind of thing. It would be nice, and people can take some personal responsibility for that, but it doesn't pencil out on paper right now to have food independence in many areas because it's 2 or 3 times as much to produce the same amount of food as you could somewhere else and ship it up. So, I mean, while it's a novel argument, it's not new. Again, it's the protectionism of the Jones Act style stuff right now.
Yeah, exactly right, Michael. And it sort of, I mean, there was a couple of hints in there. I don't want to go too far with this, but there were a couple of hints of NSTAR doesn't want to be the one that's advocating for LNG. NSTAR wants to be seen as rah Alaska, rah Cook Inlet, rah Alaska energy independence, rah. I mean, John even got into saying, and I hope the big pipeline comes down by then. And when Cook Inlet finally does run out, we finally have it was NSTAR doesn't want to be seen as the one pushing for the commercially reasonable solution here. It wants to be seen as the rah Alaska, and I can sort of understand that. If John has in the back of his mind that he wants to run for governor or senator someday, he doesn't want to be seen as advocating, foreign sources of supply. So I can sort of see that. There was also a hint in there, I will say, of let's protect Alaska producers. There was a discussion in there about a segment of it was let's protect Alaska producers, and let's protect the infrastructure on the Kenai Peninsula related to those producers. And let's ensure that those people have jobs, and those people have no discussion about, well, there'll be jobs with an LNG plant, there'll be jobs constructing an LNG plant, but it was more let's protect the industry we have, and let's protect the people who are employed related to that industry that we have, sort of again, regardless of cost, because costs are running away from us, and so the protectionism was another feature of that. To me. And you can see this show up in the debate. To me,
Right.
The question is just cost. Alaska is a high cost place,
Right.
the way it is right now.
And who is going to pay, and how much more is the cost? I mean, those all need to be components of it. It's easy to say it doesn't matter how much it costs because government's paying until you start to ask the question of, well, who pays that? And that's where we run into the problems. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it. We're out of time.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
We'll be back in hour 2, dead ahead, right after this. Yeah, I mean, this is not a new argument. It's just the question of, well, yeah, it'd be great if we had our own, but at what cost? Is it 2, 3, 4 times as much as we could have it shipped up? Is it more reliable or less reliable? I mean, there's, all kinds of questions in there. Sure, it'd be nice if I could manufacture all my own stuff right here in my own backyard and do it all myself. That'd be great. But is it feasible? And does it make sense? And I think that's the question that we need to be asking ourselves.
Yeah, John, there was also another point in there where John was talking about the negotiations that they're having with the producers who might supply this incremental supply. And he said they don't want to enter into firm contracts. They want to do interruptible contracts. If they have the supply, they will deliver it to us, but they don't have a firm obligation because they don't want the liability that would go with violating their firm or breaching their firm obligation and leading NSTAR to have to curtail customers. They want to keep it on an interruptible basis. And John said that's not, that doesn't work for us. That doesn't work for a gas utility. We can't sit there saying,
you've got to have a supply. You can't just be like, oh, you're out to this week. Okay, no problem. We'll hang out and wait,
Yeah, just turn off your furnace while we're waiting for the supply to show up.
Yeah.
And so, it's, as I say, the issue's running away from the Cook Inlet. Costs, the realization are that costs are higher, prices would be higher, economics would be worse for relying on the Cook Inlet. Cook Inlet producers that they're looking to don't want to enter into firm contracts. And part of the discussion was the Cook Inlet, the 2 Cook Inlet producers we're talking about, Fury with the Kitchen Lights project, and Blue Crest with the Cosmopolitan project. Those two producers are saying in their negotiations that, well, royalty relief isn't enough. We really need more. Hendricks says, the Fury project says, well, yeah, give me royalty relief, but I also need $300 million to help me, help develop the project. And Cosmopolitan saying, Cosmopolitan, who's got an ADA loan, a loan from ADA already, who has asked for relief on that because they can't make the payments. They're saying, hey, we need more money to develop this project also. So it's not just that costs are up, it's that they're not willing to enter into firm contracts. And they're saying that the subsidies that the legislature is offering in terms of royalty relief aren't enough in the first place. They're going to need additional stuff in terms of financing. And it just the storyline just keeps running further and further away from the Cook Inlet. I think we need to put a stake in the ground, say we're going to bring in LNG. If all of a sudden that breaks the dam and people say, okay, I'm willing to enter into firm contracts at commercially attractive prices, then okay. But we do have a shortage of Cook Inlet supply coming up. LNG is the solution to that shortage of supply. Turns out LNG also looks to be the least expensive of the alternatives for that additional supply. And so we ought to just get on with that and stop, going in circles waiting for, something to happen in the Cook Inlet that you can't see happening out there at this point.
Everybody loves it when somebody else pays for all that stuff. Fortunately, it's us that's paying for it in the long run. But you're 100% right. If all the indicators basically say LNG is going to be the cheapest, most affordable, and most dependable option, why continue at that point? Other than for your own ego or pride to say it's Alaskan gas and we're getting Alaskan gas? Well, great. Dig it on your nickel. And when you discover that big pocket, then we can add that to the mix. But until then, everybody's got to heat. Everybody's got to keep their house warm. And until then, we need to find out a solid, attainable solution. And it seems to me like the LNG is the way to go right now.
And John did confirm that LNG is flexible. I mean, you can delay cargoes, you can resell cargoes. A lot of the LNG that's sold on the market now is resale of LNG that somebody else had bought. And so you can resell cargoes. There's a lot of different ways to if there is a big find, if there is a small find in the Cook Inlet at commercially reasonable prices that you can add to the mix, there's a lot of ways to create pockets in the LNG supply chain to accommodate that additional supply. So I don't, in all honesty, other than the rah, we want Alaska independence. And by the way, there's a national security issue along in here too. Other than that, I just don't see, why we're holding our breath or holding out hope for Cook Inlet supplies. The economics don't work. The commitments don't work. The cost is moving away from it. The shortage is coming on that LNG can solve. So we just need to get on with it.
Yeah. No, move ahead, move along. Nothing to see here. This was not the deal you were looking for. Move along. All right, Brad, what are you looking at for next week, real quick?
So we've got Alaska Finance, or the Legislative Finance is presenting to the Senate and House Finance committees in the middle of this week. I think House Finance goes first and Senate goes second. And that's going to be sort of the big numbers as the Senate releases its operating budget, sort of the big numbers of what we've got. We're going to see Bert structure the Ledge Finance presentation. So it shows this huge deficit that we have no way of covering except through PFD cuts. And so we've got to move ahead with PFD cuts. And this discussion of a big PFD, the Hammond PFD, we just need to leave that in the rearview mirror. So yeah, that's what's in the week ahead. More of that.
Wow. It'll be interesting. Rob catches one piece on the way out. He says, one more piece. We, the producers, this is the problem with the petrostate. We, the producers of energy, are entitled to cheap energy regardless of how much it takes to subsidize it. That's true. That's what happens when you get a petrostate. All right, Brad Keithley, Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it. We'll see you next week.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
Folks, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Yep, live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning and welcome to the program. Tuesday, just finished up with Brad Keithley with Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the Weekly Top 3. Interesting discussion. Especially that discussion there at the end about the NSTAR with the interview or the debate with John Sims from NSTAR, talking about the crisis of gas in the Cook Inlet. And quite honestly, this is it's such a fixable problem if you just look at it from the perspective of what is the most reliable, in the long run, the cheapest, and, will give you the most dependable bang for your buck in all of this. And that, of course, is the LNG component of just importing the LNG. Now, I understand where John is coming from. I understand where anybody who comes in and says, well, we need it for, Alaska energy independence or, national security reasons. We don't want to have to be depending on, Canada for, come on, Canada, is it really foreign if it's Canada? They're right there. We're all in the same, as Brad pointed out, we're all in the same hemisphere, defense hemisphere. So is it really foreign? I don't know. And how much, what's the cost differential? If you can, import LNG for, I don't know, pick a number, whatever the magic number is, $12 per MCF. That's the imported price. But because you want Alaskan owned, Alaskan independent oil and Alaskan gas, and it costs you 20, 18, 20, 22, I don't know. Maybe even more, maybe close to double, maybe in some cases the cost, but when you factor in all the costs, including the subsidies and anything else they may do, and all of a sudden the cost of that gas is twice what it would be for LNG, then is it worth it? Is it worth it at that point to even consider something else? Yes, I would love to develop Alaska's gas fields. I would love to find a way to get that 17 trillion cubic feet of gas up on the North Slope down to Tidewater somewhere where we could use it, we could ship it out, we could do whatever for it. But if the metrics, if the money and the economics of it just don't work out, then do we keep chasing that simply by trying to find a way to make the monies work out by giving them more government subsidies or taking money from taxpayers to do it? Or do we just look at the simple solution, which is, hey, how about we just import the gas? How about we just import it and store it, and we know that there's always another tanker on the sea coming to get us and bring us the next one? That would seem to make sense there. Then why do we continue to push this whole narrative and keep going on about, the subsidies and everything? Well, because the producers in the inlet, they don't want to lose out. They want to keep going. I mean, Brad's talking about like the Cosmopolitan field where they've already got an 80 a loan that they're struggling to repay. They're looking for, and now they want more money. I mean, how much of it is a pride issue just to make sure that we have quote unquote Alaskan gas? I mean, do you have to just keep throwing money, good money after bad to prove that we could get our own gas? Or would it just make more sense to, you know, whatever? I mean, it's like I could grow my own cow in my own backyard, but is it cheaper and make more sense for me to do it and buy one from the butcher? I mean, exactly. And and then we have the question about coal, clean burning coal. We've got some of the cleanest coal in the world here in Alaska. And why aren't we talking more about that? Why aren't we doing some pushback on some of that? I mean, it's a whole thing. It's definitely a whole thing. Now, I mean, I'd be the first to tell you that I would be sad to see, to see my energy bills go up because there's a reduction in gas supply. But I also understand that that's life. That's how it works. That's how it works. I mean, I was very pleased when I came down here, and over the first 8 months, I saved like $5,000 in my utilities over that first winter. I was like, wow, I mean, that's a great thing. But, all good things must come to an end. If you can't get the cheap stuff anymore, then maybe we'll all have to pick it up. So you just look for the next best option. And if the next best option is LNG, why do we keep fighting it? Again, I would love to have access to natural gas here in Alaska. But again, if it's 1.5 to 2 times the cost and it doesn't have the reliability, and they can't say that they can deliver it every month or every 90 days or whatever the time frame is, if they can't guarantee that, then that's a problem. That's the problem. I mean, there you go. Kevin McCabe in the chat room says there is one plan to use FRSUs permanently, which are I think the FRSUs is those are the gasification units, right? To use those permanently parked in Nikiski or Port Mac and just bring in LNG tankers to tie up to them and resupply the gas. Not from Alaska, probably not from Canada. Can you say shipping costs? Well, I mean, again, is it reliable, and what are the actual costs, and what does that do compared to Alaskan gas? How much would the difference be? I mean, if it's a fractional difference, if it's a 5% difference, okay, Alaska gas, we could pursue that. As long as they can also offer the dependability, the reliability, and the quality, as long as all those things are equal, and they know that, we're going to be getting that gas every month for X number of years, then great. Then, 5%, maybe even a 10% difference, not that big a deal. But if you start going over 10% into double digits, and now it's a 20 or 25 or 30 or 40 or 50% difference, then that's a real problem. I mean, why aren't we doing that? And if we start importing it and you're looking for scale, yeah, you're right, Herder. They could rail it up to Fairbanks. Fairbanks is now trucking gas from the North Slope. I don't know what the cost is up there, but the last I heard, it was pretty significantly higher than it was here in Anchorage for that gas that they were trucking down from the slope. I mean, you can rail it. You can rail it from Anchorage to Fairbanks, or maybe even from Fairbanks down to here. I mean, who knows? But at some point, I think you have to look at it and go, what makes the most sense, and how long do we have? That chart that Brad brings up, not that one. This is fine. The chart that Brad brings up says that the demand is going to be in 2028. We're going to start to see that slippage in the demand. The demand will still be at 70 million BCF or 70 BCF billion cubic feet. And 2028 will only be able to supply 62 of the 70 billion. So, okay. So we've got, a couple of years here. Let's get something done, and let's see how many tankers we would have. That would only take 2 tankers if we were looking for that 8 billion cubic feet of gas to make up that much. So when do we acknowledge it, and when do we just say, okay, this is the answer? I mean, again, at some point you got to just say pride in Alaskan resources and Alaska gas is great. But if you can't get it reliably and the cost is exorbitant, then just bring it in. Bring it in. We all got to eat. Ron says the same people who want Alaska, quote unquote, gas are the ones who buy from Amazon because it's cheaper than local products. Oh, that's savage. That's savage. Oh, man. Oh, man, that is just, oof. I mean, you're probably not wrong. You're probably not wrong. What a pride in Alaska. Well, did you go down and buy all that stuff from local Alaska businesses? No. Did you see how much that stuff costs? Yeah, exactly. Are you sure you want Alaska gas and you don't want to bring it in? Maybe we should reach out to Amazon and see if Amazon can ship us some LNG. Maybe they got a drone for that. Maybe they can drop the drone in, do some LNG out there. Oh man, that is some savage stuff right there, Ron. You're not wrong. People who want Alaska gas are the ones that buy from Amazon. Well, but and that's an interesting point because it's this is the conundrum of the free market, right? So I want to support local businesses, and I do shop at local businesses quite a bit. But there are times when I'm looking to buy something and I know that I can't personally afford it from a local business. But I know that if I ordered online, I can afford it and have it. And so where does that line cross? Where, I go to the grocery store, I go to the local stores for doodads and knickknacks and my day-to-day stuff. But every now and then I need to buy something. When is it hypocrisy when you're like, I buy Alaskan, except for that, because I buy that from, I bought that from Amazon kind of thing. When does that kind of fly in there? Anyway, it's an interesting conundrum. We would not be talking about this if we'd built a pipeline 25 years ago. Hey, I still remember Jim Whitaker, the former mayor of the Fairbanks North Star Borough, in his office. I was in his office one day and he had a picture he had on the wall. It was a newspaper, full page newspaper ad. And it said gas line going in next year. And it was from 1957. And it had the whole thing, the gas line. We've been working on it for 90 years. The closest we ever got to it was when they put the bed down for the Trans-Alaska pipeline, and they put the shorings up, and they made it wide enough that you could have run a gas line in parallel with that. There's if you look at some of the cradles were big enough to have other pipes run down there because they had designed in having some gas come down with the oil, so it would be oil and gas, and that just never came to fruition. But anyway, it's interesting. It's interesting to say the least. Amazon is China, says Amy. I've been getting rid of everything that is made in China. I don't care if I like it. I'm getting rid of it. Okay, good for you. Way to stand up. It's good for you. Good for you. Okay, we got to go. Sometimes we don't have the doodads in Alaska. That's true. Doodads do. I'm a dad. Do you? Do you do dad? Never mind. All right, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show continues. Chris Story coming up in the final segment of the show today. We'll continue with more in just a moment.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Jack says 90% of what I purchase from Amazon is not made here. Well, no, it's not even made here, Jack. It's not about whether it's made in Alaska. Did you buy it from a local Alaskan business? Maybe it's something that they bought off Amazon and are reselling. I swear to God, sometimes that's what it looks like. I go to some place and I'm like, I just saw that on Amazon the other day. And I'm like, how much is it? Ooh, okay. Yeah, I see. They must have, I mean, it happens, right? It is what it is. That's funny. That is some funny stuff. Tawny says she's buying an Alaskan beef from a farmer this week. That is the way to do it. I used to buy sides of beef and sides of pig from Delta Meat and Sausage. So delicious, so much good stuff. Especially the half a pig. We'd always get half a pig. Oh, so good, so tasty. Love it. All right. Man, now I want some sausage. Now I want some Delta Meat and Sausage from that, because they made a pork breakfast sausage. It was so good, so good. I could use a big old sausage patty right now with some stuff, eggs and stuff and things. All right. Let's see. I'm going backwards. Echo Lake, Alaska moose and bear sausage. Oh yeah, no, if you can get it, I'm all about that. Don't get me wrong. My dad used to take his caribou down to Alaska Sausage Company, and he'd have pepperoni sticks made. I mean, I remember one time he brought back one of those big yellow heavy duty trash bags full of like loops and loops and loops and loops of this continuous run of caribou pepperoni sticks like this. Oh, it was so good. Holy cow. Yeah, McPeak's, they had great stuff too. McPeak's had their pepperoni sticks as well. My dad used to have moose hot dogs made. He'd get hot dogs made out of moose by Alaska Sausage Company down here in Anchorage. He'd haul his moose down here, and a chunk of it, or one of the bags of whatever, and they'd process it up. And man, yeah, that's all I ate was moose hot dogs when I was a kid growing up. So good. So tasty. I didn't really have beef until I was older. I mean, weird stuff. Okay. Ham it up, says Henry. Yeah, no, exactly. We'll ham it up, man. If I had a Delta Meat Meat Company, half a ham. I bought stuff from Indian Valley. I haven't bought anything from Echo Lakes, but I have had some of it. And then what's the other one? Morgan Valley, the one down in Homer. I'm so sorry, guys. I can't remember the name of the. I can see the guy's face. I've met one of the owners or the managers there, and I've eaten some of their food at one of the shindigs that I was doing down there. They had a bunch of stuff out there, and it is just escaping me, and I can't remember what the name of it, but it's down there in Homer. So somebody will remind me here in just a minute of what the meat company is down in Homer. They do amazing stuff. Indian Valley makes best moose hot dogs. I don't know. I may have had some of those, but I guess I'll have to try it now. Somebody gets me a taste. We'll do a cook-off. Everybody bring their best moose hot dogs, and we'll have a taste test. See who likes what. Oh, okay. All right. We're 35 seconds out, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to jump in it with Chris Story. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Do they eat? Oh, thank you very much. It wasn't Valley. It was Canyon. McNeil Canyon. Thank you, Chris. McNeil Canyon. That's the name of the meat company now. They do some good stuff. Delicious. I just like meat, man. Why don't get it twisted. All right. Here we go. Jumping back in. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the YouTube-y things and do all the things that everybody asks you to do online just to make sure we get it all scored away. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show, proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means. Here he is, though. That guy, Michael Dukes, the one with the show.
Yeah, so now they've been talking in the chat room about. Now I'm hungry because we were talking about, I said something about you could raise your own cow or go out and buy a half a beef or whatever. And then somebody said, I bought half a beef. And then I'm like, yeah, I used to do that and used to buy half a pig from Delta Meat and Sausage out there at Delta Junction. And then everybody else started piping up. And do you remember this? Do you remember that? And now I'm just hungry for like moose hot dogs and caribou pepperoni and all the good stuff. Bear breakfast sausage. I know we've had that before. It's just, so delicious. So good. So good. And there's just something about a good cut of meat, whether it's game meat or farm raised or whatever. I like it all. But a moose hot dog, I haven't had a moose hot dog in years. It's been a long time since I had any moose hot dogs, but I was raised on those things. I don't think I'd even eaten a beef hot dog until I was probably 12 years old. And I was like, this is weird. What is this? This tastes funny, man. What's up with this? It tastes funny. Moose hot dogs from Alaska Sausage Company, down here, in Anchorage. My dad used to haul the stuff down and have him make it up. And, oof, man, so good. So good. Okay. Let's continue. Somebody wants to get Chris's comment because I said something about McNeil Canyon. I couldn't remember the name of the company. They're a meat processor down in the Homer area. And Ron said, or Frank said, they still eat meat in Homer? Yeah. But it's all plant-based, so don't worry about it. Nobody's offended, I'm sure. Moose over beef every day. That's good. All right. Sorry, I'm a little bit of rambly today here. We're going to go back and talk a little bit about a couple of the stories that we have up there. The state of Alaska has now requested and asked for a stay in that recent Superior Court decision, finding that it was unconstitutional to use public money to pay for tuition at private or religious schools. Craig Taylor argued last week in an hour-long news conference that Judge Adolph Zeman's decision was broad and appeared to end all Alaska homeschool and correspondence programs. Attorneys for the plaintiff argue that the decision was instead narrowly focused on preventing unconstitutional spending of public money at private schools, although they did immediately request a stay of the decision once it was read. They were like, whoa, wait a second. Now, everybody was upset about this, but now you're going to get into the dueling lawyers thing. Lawmakers, educators, and parents were alarmed by Zeman's decision when it appeared to strike down correspondence programs in their entirety. But since then, legislators like Anchorage Democratic Senator Bill Wielechowski, an attorney, it's going to give him some credibility there, have said a narrow statutory change and new regulations could be a targeted fix. Could be. Remember, this is all about, this is why lawyers have opinions and not determinations. They're opinions, because somebody else could make an argument that their opinion is wrong, and here's why, and it could be overturned. So this is an interesting take. Zeman struck down two statutes as unconstitutional that were proposed by Senator Mike Dunleavy and approved in 2014. The two statutes have been increasingly used by parents to pay for tuition at private and religious schools, though the extent of the practice is not fully known. Enter Scooter Kendall. When Judge Zeman found out these two statutes were passed in tandem for the specific purpose of enabling constitutional spending, that's what he found out, said Scooter. He said that part or full-time tuition at private and public schools was basically being paid by the state, and perversely, it was being counted as public education funding. That's insane. Now, the way the correspondence programs like IDEA work, it was not part of the court's decision, he says. and they weren't part of the underlying case. He said there could be edge cases when a student uses correspondence funding to take 1 or 2 classes at a private school. But he said it was incorrect to say the judge ruled it was unconstitutional for schools to use private vendors to buy textbooks. Again, this is opinion-based. He said that's absurdly overbroad. But he said, he also said using the correspondence allotment for private tutoring to help them improve math or English, that would be, again, it's a private institution. Just because you don't think that applies doesn't mean that that's the truth. He said, I don't see any world in which that's a problem at all for people to use their allotment to get private tutors at a private educational institution. I don't think there's any world in which that's a problem at all. I think at that point you actually get spending money at a private education or religious education. That's your bright line. Well, if you're spending money with a private education, it says right there, private educational, private or, let me pull I got to make sure. I don't want to misspeak. This is the actual verbiage from the Constitution. No money shall be paid from public funds for the direct benefit of any religious or other private educational institution. Is a tutoring business, is that a private educational institution? Yes. Is a private school where you're sending your kids to get lessons from, for maybe math or public speaking or music, is that a private educational institution? Yes. So, question. How can you just blithely say, oh, none of that matters? It's only the things that I wanted that got done. Everything else is fine, just fine. Don't worry about it. Loki Tobin, the Anchorage Democrat, said Friday that the Senate Education Committee was drafting legislation intended to provide certainty to the more than 22,000 Alaskan students enrolled in correspondence programs. But again, remember last night or yesterday, we were talking with Sarah Vance, and this wasn't just about the kids who were in correspondence or allotment programs. It also had to do with things like the performance scholarship and everything else. Those are all questions of what's going on. And of course, Loki Tobin had to cast the blame on Dunleavy. He said Dunleavy could provide stability right now, and he's choosing not to do so. And so we're stepping up because we've identified this as our top priority, which is adequate, stable, predictable funding for our schools, all our schools. Oh, you could just see them chomping at the bit to get their hands in this homeschooling stuff, can't you? Can't you just see it? Now, of course, Jamie Allard, Sarah Vance, the judiciary, they've got this bill coming out that we talked about yesterday with Sarah. But the Senate has already said that they're not interested in that. They are not interested in an approach that would they're not interested in an approach that would change the Constitution. I mean, this is going to be a huge deal. I mean, it's already a huge deal, but I just think the more that we look at this, the more that we start to dissect it, the more that people come in and argue this amongst the different opinions from the different lawyers and everything else, I think people are going to look back on this and say, this was a watershed moment in this whole thing. I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to look back on this and say, what exactly happened? Yeah, getting lectured by Scooter just wrenches the mind a bit, says Herder. Yeah, I mean, nice enough guy, I'm sure, but man. Then there was an article in Must Read by Eric Carter, who's 23 years former Navy submarine officer, currently in the reserves. He's a master's degree in teaching from UAA and an engineering degree from Oregon State. And he's homeschooled all 6 of his kids. But he has a very interesting take on this, on the whole thing with homeschooling, and basically says, we all need to close rank. We need to pull together and basically, close ranks up together and not get into a match that would divide us. And he actually makes an interesting point. This is why I bring this up, this whole article. Because He's asked the question, how should homeschool advocates approach this? I may not have the whole campaign plan, but I have a starting suggestion. Let's refuse to answer the one question we love to talk about, the one question that drives the heart of every school choice homeschooler out there, the one question that everybody around us is sick of hearing us rant about, the one question that will be used to separate, divide, and conquer us individually. That one question, why do you homeschool? And he says, don't answer that question. Not in the comments section of social media, not to the news reporter, not in the articles, not in the blogs. Why? Because when we start answering why we homeschool, we're giving our opponents the key to dividing us. And he goes on to use some examples. Like if you live off the grid and there's no public school available, then the opponents say, fine, we can force students who live within X distance from the school to attend. Now prove to us where you live and why you can't get to a public school. If we agree, you could fill out this application and maybe we'll take care. I mean, a bureaucracy. Maybe the parent is concerned with preserving the child's cultural heritage. Well, great. Maybe we can give the people with approved heritage permission to homeschool and the rest can enroll where we tell them to. And he goes on and on and on to talk about it. It's an interesting point, but you're right. Why do I homeschool? Because it's my choice. Because it's none of your business. I chose to homeschool because I believe it's the right thing to do. And it's what I wanted to do. I love it. I mean, I think that that is a great, it's a great thought experiment, if nothing else, to give you kind of the idea of, as you're talking with people about this stuff and they start to ask questions like that, just be prepared to think about what might they want to then use, how might they then use that answer against you again on the other side. So anyway, interesting article. It's over at Must Read Alaska. You can go check it out if you'd like and see what it's all about. All right. We got to go. We got to take a quick break. We got Chris Story coming up, the man from Homer. He's going to be doing our weekly life coaching lesson and positivity update. You know what that means. We're going to get all positive up in here. That's all coming up. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Back with more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. Okay. Lisa and Gary, NEA, get what they want. Interesting read of their firm 990s. From the Alaska Policy Forum back in 2022. Most NEA Alaska spending goes to its staff, not members. I guess that's not that shocking to me. I mean, I guess I'm not really that shocked by that revelation right there. We know that most of those unions, especially in the upper echelons, I mean, these are guys that are pulling down 6 figures in some places and sometimes 7 figures. So not that shocking as it goes through here. Let me see if I can. Oops, I'm sorry. I'm looking for the. There we go. No, show me the whole thing. There we go. No, it's not. Wow, this thing is not cooperating with me. Okay, fine. Boom. See, now I'm hearing myself. There we go. Okay. So now I just wanted to go back here and click on that link there. There we go. Now I got it. This is why I click on links that are in the chat room, because it's such a pain in the tail not to. Oh, this is an article from Sarah Montalbano. We actually went over this because my highlight is still, I have a program that highlights things when I want on a web page, and this thing's got highlights all over it. Because it remembers the page that I went to. So anyway, it's interesting. Yeah, Sarah is quite the educational guru on this stuff. Okay. Let's go. Bear equals trichinosis. Well, I mean, just what you got to cook it to the right temperature, baby. All right, let's get Chris on the line here. See what he's doing. Hey, look at that. Worked first time. That's amazing.
Yeah, but you triggered me when you were talking about bear breakfast sausage.
Oh, man.
You know that
So
I've been through trichinosis. I'm a trichinosis survivor, and I'd appreciate that you'd respect that in the future.
Were you triggered by the trichinosis?
Big time.
Really? And I've never known anybody that had trichinosis.
You know me.
Yeah,
I ended up in the hospital. It was that bad.
It's pretty not a good thing, huh?
Well, let me just put it this way: if somebody offers you bear sushi, don't eat it.
Oh my God! Why
Don't
would
eat
you?
raw bear.
No, why would you eat raw? No, raw. No, do not eat raw bear.
Well, Michael
or rabbit.
I was 20 years old, just fresh-faced 20-year-old who didn't know that how you make jerky is to dehydrate it, not cook it. How was I supposed to know? I grew up in Homer. I went to public school from 8th grade forward. How do I know how jerky is made? So when I'm offered bear jerky and it's delicious and tastes like, just an incredible sort of the I can't think of it. Anyway, it was amazing. It was fantastic, and it was raw. Who knew?
And it was raw. Who knew? Well, I mean, was he passing this out to everybody? Did everybody get sick, or just you? Were you just the lucky?
Yeah, he was a coworker. And the way we figured out that we had something in common is we passed each other in the laboratory as we were getting blood drawn because our respective doctors were trying to figure out what the heck was going on with us. Like, wait a minute, what are you doing here? I don't know. What are you doing here? I don't know. I don't feel good. I don't feel good. Dummies, you ate raw bear.
Yeah.
Morons.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is a way to, like you said, you have to dehydrate it. It can be cured. It can be, I mean, you can make jerky over low heat and do everything else. But yeah, the bottom line is, especially with bear or rabbit, I would definitely be cooking that stuff to 180 degrees. I would not be messing around with that stuff for sure. Delicious. The bear breakfast sausage is delicious. So
take your word for it. I'll never eat bear again. Once and done.
One and done. That's it. Well, I mean, it's understandable. I mean, I'm not criticizing you. Definitely understandable that you would wuss out. I mean, that you would go through that and then.
Hey.
What's your plan for today, my friend? What's our topic for today's program?
I want to take you to the happiest place on earth.
The happiest place on earth? Man, I haven't been to Disneyland in years. Okay. All right. Let's go. We'll do it.
And me, I've got our mouths get to your ears. I'm ready.
I know. We're all ready. Okay. Hold the line. I'll be right back to you here. I'll put you back on hold. Does raw moose give human bugs or sickness? The bear and rabbits are both bad for trichinosis for sure. I don't know. I mean, I cook it all. I just cook it. I mean, don't take any chances. Why would you want to? What are you going to have? Moose tartare? Just cook it, man. It's delicious. Cook it. A little seasoning, a little salt, a little butter. Away you go. I just cook everything. Game meat especially. I would cook game meat especially to temperature. No tartare or sushi for me. All right, here we go. Jumping back in. The Michael Duke Show. Common Sense Radio. Okay, ready to go here. Chris Story, the man from Homer. I mean, it just sounded weird, but felt good. Felt good when I said it. He joins us every week to talk about, a little bit of everything. Wood ticks, lunatics, politics, whatever it is that he wants to talk about. let's get over to it here and see what he has to say. Today he's going to try and take us to the happiest place on earth, which I got my mouse here, so I guess we're good to go. What's happening, my friend?
Spoiler alert, it's closer than you think. But speaking of Disney World, my grandfather, my father's father, helped build Disney World, met Roy Disney. Walt died, of course, before Disney World was complete, but it was his dream, and it was his vision that would go on to fruition, to include Epcot Center and everything else. But yeah, pretty interesting that that's deemed the happiest place on earth. My experiences there as a child were wonderful and happy, but going back with children, oy, that's wow.
That's a whole
That's
nother
nuts.
deal, right? I mean,
Mm,
you realized what a perfect child you were when you were there, right? Because like what happened to my kids,
exactly.
exactly. No, I've never been to Disney World. I've been to Disneyland when I was much younger, and it was enjoyable. It was cool. But yeah, Disney World looks like a whole nother kettle of fish.
I've been kind of obsessed with Arthur Brooks lately, not David Brooks, although he writes some interesting work as well. But Arthur Brooks has been talking about happiness for years. In fact, he teaches at Harvard a class on happiness, which might be the most worthwhile class at Harvard these days. But he's got a quote that says, "Happiness isn't a destination; it's a direction." And we've all heard the aphorisms about happiness is a journey, not a destination. But I like the idea of direction, because when you think about happiness as a journey, okay, that's just slogs through where you're going. If you think about happiness as a direction, you get to influence that. You get to point your compass to where you wish to go, and it's not like a resting place. It's an active process that you can influence daily, and you're headed towards a direction. Tiffany and I were talking last night, and we were talking about the multitude of projects we have going right now. We're remodeling a part of our office. We're remodeling a rental house. We're looking at the ugliest time of year outside at our house and all the projects we got to get going, before things turn green, and just like on and on and on. And I was kind of reminding us both that it's never over. I mean, it's always going to be something. It's sort of like the lit end of a fuse is our life, and it's not over till it's over. And this is the direction we've chosen. And just that idea of having control over the direction, or having chosen the direction with which you're going, I think I agree with Arthur Brooks. I think that lends itself to being happier, or recognizing a happier state of mind, whatever that is for you. As long as you feel like the direction I'm going is of my own choosing, I have will and willpower in this situation, then I'm choosing this direction, and here I go. And today I'm going to take a step towards that direction. Although I may not ever achieve the final destination, I'm going to keep moving in this direction.
Right. I mean, like you said, probably the most well-known aphorism on that is, happiness is not a destination; it's a journey, kind of thing. But you're right. I mean, it could be. I think you're right, because and that actually makes it even better, because sometimes your direction changes, right? Sometimes the thing
Yeah,
that you think makes you
absolutely.
happy, oh, here's my goal. I want to do this. This is going to make me happy. And then you get there and it's full of dread and whoa. And you're like, whoa, wait a second. And so you have to change direction. Your destination can change, and the journey is important and everything else, but it's always that destination, that direction that you're going. I think that is, I agree with you. I think that's a very, very valid and a more appropriate um, uh, aphorism for, going to this happy place.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think it's definitely is a fine tune of the idea of the aforementioned affirmation. But I love this idea of the destination, because it's not just, or the direction, because it isn't just aiming towards a direction and look, that's a destination I want to get to. Who am I going to take with me? Who do you want to go along for the ride? That's another part of it. Not just where do you want to go, what direction do you want to aim, but who are you going to bring along? And I think right now, in this digital connected world, it's easy to mistake, quote, friends with just people who might have a common interest, but also love to argue. I was reading in a book this morning called thoughts to build on. It's written by a guy called M.R. Kottmeyer back in the early 70s. He was sort of the Tony Robbins of America, and on all the different late night shows and such. He wrote these little kind of fun, popcorn for the mind type books on being inspired and living an optimistic life and all that stuff. But he has actually some good points. And one of his points was, long before social media came along, don't argue. Stop picking up arguments that are unnecessary. There's no reason to go looking for these kinds of arguments. And when you cultivate the habit of actually having real relationships in life, in like real life, and you're not just alone with a connection through a cell phone or a computer, but you're with other people. I think that's the other piece of it, is the destination and the direction you're going towards, great, but who's coming with you and who are you bringing along for the ride? I think that's also incredibly important. I interviewed Jim Stovall recently. He was diagnosed at 17 with a disease that would take his eyesight, which did in his 20s.
Right.
And after he went blind, he then went on to write 50 plus books, 9 movies. There's another movie being made this summer that'll be probably, I think it'll open in some theaters, but it'll probably go to Prime at some point in the not too distant future. And all of this to say, he practices what his grandmother called the golden list. So when he was probably about 8 or 9 years old, his sister was facing a fatal cancer diagnosis and was in constant treatments. And so he spent a lot of time with his grandparents while his mom and dad were at the hospital with his sister. And she said, to kind of bring him around from the depressed state he was going into as a child with this circumstance, she said, in my house, you will practice the golden list. He said, well, what's that? Every morning, you have to get up and recite 10 things you're grateful for. And he's like, okay. So he started that practice back when he was a little kid. He continues it to this day. It's hard to have a bad day when you start your day with a practice of picking 10 things in your life, no matter what else is going on. I'm grateful for these things. And who are you grateful for in your life? And all of that to say that the direction you're aiming is completely in your influence and in your control, irrespective of your boss, what an idiot your boss is, or what a terrible economy, Bidenomics is destroying us. But all these things that are out of your control, what's in your control is the direction you're aiming, and happiness will find you in that journey.
I mean, I like that. I mean, again, giving thanks for everything. It's like you said, it's hard to remain negative when you're focused. And this again comes back to focusing the mind on the things that you want, not the things that you don't, right? I mean, which again goes back to happiness is a direction. If I'm always focusing on the things that I don't want, or the things that upset me, or the things that disturb me, I'm obviously not faced in the direction of happiness. So turn it around. And that's what the golden list does, is that it turns it around and puts your mind in a whole different mindset, right?
Yeah, you know, I've talked about this before, the RAS of your mind, the reticular activating system. And when you decide you're going to get a Honda Pilot, suddenly, oh my God, I'm surrounded by people that are driving Honda Pilots. I've never even noticed them before, or I'm going to get an Audi or whatever the car is. And so it's your mind filters necessarily for our own survival, has to filter out things that don't matter, or we just become paralyzed with too much information, too much overload. So we have this natural filtration system. And when you start your day with this golden list, and I've done this in a different way than what Stovall talks about, but in a different way, and I can tell you it works. When you start your day looking for things that you're grateful for, things that you're happy about, or things that you want, suddenly you find yourself finding those things in life throughout your day, just like the red car you want to get, or whatever it is that you can so assimilate and relate to when you think about it. Like, oh yeah, once I started looking for this, then I saw it everywhere. Well, the same thing when you start looking for gratitude and you start practicing gratitude, you start thinking about the direction you're going versus the destination. Because how many people have we seen? I mean, would you trade your life right now for that of Jeff Bezos? Or no, I mean, of course not. Nobody who's achieved, whatever success monetarily or business wise, you'd not trade your life for theirs ever. What you might trade is some of the money they've got, which, wait a minute, okay, is that a direction you'd like to go? Would you like to be thinking about creating wealth and creating more wealth in your life? Well, that starts where you are with what you've got. And that starts with recognizing you're going the wrong direction. shifting gears. Like you said, we should be flexible and remain flexible and not so rigid to one path that we miss exits that would have taken us to somewhere even better or a different kind of happiness, because you do have complete control over the direction you're going right now today. It's not because of somebody else. It's choices you've made, and you can make a new choice and go a new direction today.
Because it's the only thing we have complete and utter control over is our mind and how we react to circumstances. That's it. We can control nothing else other than how we react to things that are in our life. And that in and of itself means that we can actually kind of control some of those situations, because there's a resonance, there's a harmony with things that are around us. And so, if you start focusing on things and paying attention and really controlling your thoughts on that, it kind of harmonizes, and there's synergies out there that will cause some of those things to fall in place. So in effect, by controlling yourself, you do control your environment.
Absolutely. And just recognizing simple and mundane things, maybe sharing a meal with a friend today, or getting a cup of coffee, or writing a thank you note. I received a note yesterday out of the blue, and a small gift and a handwritten note from somebody that I'd done. He said had done a great favor to him, and really it was just a little bit of advice. It meant the world to me. It was so amazing. It just reminded me that taking the time to send a handwritten note, it's so foreign to us almost anymore. It is really, it was a sense of like, wow, I was so appreciative and grateful for that. And that's a simple thing you could do today. And you influence their life, whomever you're sending it to, but also your own. You can't help but feel better when you offer some sort of gratitude to somebody else, or acknowledgement or recognition of something they've done for you. And like just spending a little bit of time with somebody that you might think is a little lonely right now. You can reach out to them, and suddenly it improves upon your life, your happiness, your state of mind. And these are just tiny little things that can be done in an instant and change everything for you.
Chris Story, the man from Homer, is our guest. Chris, I love HomerAlaska.com. How's your new book? You're putting the finishing touches on that, and it's going to be out in a couple weeks?
Yeah, hopefully less, but yep, just got the final proof of the cover work. Millionaire Maker is going to be coming to life. My goal is May 1, but I'll tell you first, Michael.
As long as you're pointed in that direction, my friend, that's all that matters, right?
I'm happy.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, Chris Story, thank you so much, my friend. As always, it's a great pleasure to speak with you. You spoke to what I needed to hear today, and I appreciate that. So we'll see you next week. Appreciate it.
Don't eat any raw bear.
No raw bear or tularemia from the rabbits. You don't need that either. All right. Thank you, my friend. Folks, we're out of time. We got to go. Hour 2 comes to a close. Tomorrow is Wednesday. Mike Shower and, well, maybe somebody else. We'll see. Back with more, The Michael Duke Show. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good day. All right. Any final thoughts there, Mr. Story? Being happy, healthy, wise?
No, that's it. I appreciate your comments. The homeschool situation. You homeschooled all your kids, didn't you?
Yep. Every one of them.
Yep.
All 5 of them from the very beginning.
There's somebody in Homer that is looking to start a faith-based Christian school. And I don't know the exact parameters, if it's going to be like K through 12 or if it's just, primary. I don't know what the goal is. But as I talk to her more, she's traveling, I think, to a Charlie Kirk event right now, and then she's going to be back. And as I talk to her more, I think you'd be a good one for her to get to know and talk to, and maybe help spread the word or interview her. I think it's be great to have that option again.
Yeah. No, love to hear it. Put her in contact with me, and we'll get her squared away. So we're going to have to be fighting this for sure. All right, Chris. Well, thank you so much, my friend.
Okay, buddy.
I'll talk to you again. We'll see you next week. Okay, folks, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, do all that stuff, yada, yada, yada. You know the drill. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.